I ran out of track, so let's do an update. So welcome back. It is 2025. Happy New Year. I did have a stream on the 2nd, but this is the first official video of 2025, so I hope everyone is doing well, and I appreciate you joining me again for another year. As I said at the beginning, I'm a few lengths short of track, which has worked out just fine because I've had to make some changes to the track plan, which probably means I'm going to need a few extra lengths, but I wouldn't mind getting your opinion on some of the changes that I'm thinking of making. And likewise, I've been working on the passenger platforms, and I have now completed all of the 3D printing for the girders and platforms for the entire length of Union Station. So I'm going to spin the camera around and we can take a look at what I've completed. So at the last video, I had just completed this area of benchwork, the last two zones, and I had laid down the track in the decline at the back of the layout. I had turned the layout around, I'd laid the track, and then I returned it and fixed all the elevations. So since then, I have connected the main line as it comes out from under the city all the way down, and it's now connected back to the other two zones. The area that I'm referring to as my Aldershot station is complete, and I would say about 90%, 95% of the Union Station area is also done. And as said, I did run out of track, but that's because I've also made some minor changes to the layout. So I did design the layout using a CAD program, and I was able to fit everything I wanted into the space that I had, and that wasn't the issue. And one of the more challenging things about this is I have about a 14-foot run that goes into the heart of the station. And the angle from that pair of turnouts all the way through to here was really challenging to get right. And the bottom line is that a lot of this track needed to be shifted a little bit, east and west along the layout. And that meant I needed to make some changes to the track plan. Originally, what I had planned was that there was going to be 6 station platforms and a maintenance building through which 2 service tracks ran through and a small runaround so that you could bypass this maintenance building. Well, once I started installing the track, I realized that I'd wanted to preserve the idea of 6 individual platform tracks heading into the station. And so that meant that I wanted to reconfigure the way that I had that maintenance building designed. And so what I'm starting to think is that I might want to extend those 2 tracks alongside the passenger platform so that there are 2 maintenance tracks alongside 6 passenger platforms. And I want to be able to make these service tracks long enough that I can fit a full train length onto them. And so to that point, this is a bit of a shift in how I envisioned this original maintenance yard. And what I was thinking about was there was a 2-bay building on the south side of the Mimico Via Rail Maintenance Center that I think used to be a wheel shop. And the actual size of the building in scale is basically between these 2 points. It's a very short maintenance building, and I thought that would fit perfectly. That said, the building is very generic, and I'm not sure that it's what I want to feature here. So then I started wondering about, well, maybe I could put the fueling center on this, or a variation of the Via Rail fueling center. It's a rather tall, bold building that sits out at the end of the Mimico yard and is actually one of the landmarks for the yard itself. This gets me to thinking about the fact that I do have some area here that I could change up a little bit and perhaps add some additional staging tracks. I could easily branch off from the rear maintenance track and put in a very small refueling or charging or maintenance yard, not unlike what you see at Bathurst Yard in Toronto. I realize that it gets very easy to overwhelm your layout with track. You see bare plywood, you fill it up. But in this case, I feel like building out the density here so that I have roughly 12 feet of heavy, dense passenger yard is more in line with what I really want to create, and so I feel pretty good about this. That said, I wouldn't mind your feedback on whether or not I should add this area. Again, I'm not looking to do something that is 100% prototypical, but I do like the idea that as my passenger trains roll in slowly into the yard, they continue to pass by all these other maintenance tracks. So I talked about these 3D printed rail spacers that I came up with in the last video, and I'm continuing to use them here, and especially this very long spacer that I created so that I can keep all 6 tracks in the passenger area perfectly aligned. And that's because I'm also working on the station girders and the platforms, which I am 3D printing. And because the station platforms, the canopy, the girders, the barn, whatever you want to call it, is interconnected, I need everything to maintain the exact same spacing throughout the entire passenger area. And here are the passenger platforms. So I had designed a version of these last year when I originally started to lay out the passenger platform on the previous version of the layout. And I've since refined the design and made some changes. I was able to print the entire length of this passenger platform with all of the girders in a single weekend. And in terms of filament, this was about $15. So one weekend of babysitting a printer, and $15 later, I have this entire passenger platform. Now, for those of you interested in how I was doing this with a 3D printer, I have an FDM filament printer. And in terms of print quality, they are not near what you can get out of a resin printer. So the challenges with an FDM printer is that some of the surfaces, or the topmost surface on the prints, unless you use an ironing function, is generally textured and doesn't look very good. And so for this entire area, I needed things to look smooth like concrete or steel. And so the approach I took was that I tried to make sure that I used the print bed, which is always going to turn out smooth, as the top side of any of my prints. And so everything was printed upside down, and you can see the sort of poor texture that it has on this side, but when you peel it off the print bed, it has a very smooth texture. The same thing is true for the girders. You can see here that the girder has some of the print lines on it, which is less than desirable. And the second piece is sort of just an accent piece. And this is the side of the print that was bedside. And it has a very nice smooth finish. And the side that's facing outward, or the good side, is just a series of strokes or lines that are the same width as the printer head, and so they turn out quite smooth. So when you laminate them together, you get a surface that is actually really respectable for an FDM printer. I also did a little bit of work fiddling the size of the support posts. The previous version were wider and these are much narrower. And I was able to come up with a fairly precise fit for the passenger platform so that these simply slide through these holes. They're a nice snug fit. It needs one pass of the file, which means that I was able to dry fit this entire passenger platform in about 5 minutes. So I won't be able to get any more track till probably the end of the month. So I've got the Union Station passenger platforms roughed out. I'm starting in on doing the Aldershot platforms. And I've started thinking about how I'm going to design and print the passenger platforms at West Harbour Station. So that's where things are at. I've been very fortunate. I've been able to squirrel away a bit of time every day to work on this, and things have progressed quite well. If everything goes well, I will start wiring towards the end of this month. All of the tracks have their feeder wires installed, but I haven't bothered to run any of the bus lines. I'm still waiting on a few components that I need before I want to get going on that, because I really don't want to do a start-stop on that. I just want to get to it and get it completed. Likewise, there's 2 major design challenges I want to sort out, and they have to do with my elevated city, as well as all of the bridges around the layout. I need to decide on the height of the elevated city, and once that's done, I'll be able to create the individual city modules that go across the back. Likewise, I need the city height so that I can start figuring out the height of all of my bridge girders. I have 3 different overpasses that I need to build, a minimum of 3 overpasses I need to start thinking about. And one of them is at the end of the yard, which I'm calling Mimico, and the other 2 are in the West Harbour Station area behind me. Once I have the city elevation figured out, and once I've got the bridge placement and elevations figured out, that means that I'll be able to do a little bit of scenic contouring Not all of it, just enough so that I can figure out where to put the fascia, because I need the fascia installed before I can complete the wiring. And at that point, I should be able to focus most of my efforts into the scenery aspect of the layout, because the foundational elements will be done. So things are progressing well. I'm very excited about the next steps, and Happy New Year. Thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.